Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. There's a lot of stuff going on that we need to get caught up on. We had the power outage in Spain. We've got the US military blowing millions of dollars in the Red Sea with the Houthis. We now have Mike Waltz essentially all but confirmed as a Carebear spy. We have the criminal overlords in government now trying to make it illegal for American citizens to boycott a foreign country in the Middle East. Americans can boycott America, but we are now not going to be allowed to boycott a foreign country that is engaged in a genocide. Think about that. That's crazy. And then we're going to talk about the Battle of Shiloh. So let's just go ahead and get started here. I want to point out that the United States is not doing well in the Red Sea. After losing 21 MQ-9 Reaper drones, the US has now lost an F-18 jet in a failing war to defend the Care Bear's ability to commit a genocide in Gaza. The US has failed to restore freedom of navigation in the Red Sea, cannot suppress Yemeni missiles or drones, and is massacring civilians on a pretty much regular basis. So how does this happen? An F-18 fighter jet and tow tractor fell overboard off of the USS Harry Truman and sunk in the sea. So millions of dollars just gone, just out the window. And this is happening daily. This is taxpayer money. People should be angry about this nonsense. We have coming from Clay Morris here and Whitney Webb, the traders and the DNC and MAGA thought it was a brilliant idea to give Care Bear companies monopolies in the United States power grid. Spain loses power just days after canceling an arms sale to the Care Bear Nation, funded of course by the Americans. So perhaps that's the filthy secret neither party wants to say, that the Care Bears control every sector of the US economy and infrastructure. Absolutely. So I want you guys to listen to this.
So an Israeli intelligence guy forms this company and says, we're going to take care of American hospitals, dams, water infrastructure.
Dams come later, but it was first health infrastructure.
So this guy, it is a Care Bear, just comes in and he says, oh, let us just basically take control of the water, of the power grid, of health infrastructure. You couldn't make this up even if you wanted to. Spain hit by a massive power outage days after canceling Care Bear arms deal. So I'm sure this is just totally coincidental, and we'll not play the music here, but just play the rest of this. They partnered with CISA, that is supposed to protect critical infrastructure, including election infrastructure, but also things like water systems, the power grid, all sorts of things like that, as well as hospitals. Beyond that, not just hospitals, as you mentioned, it expands to dams, to water systems, to nuclear reactors in the United States. So you have a foreign intelligence founded nonprofit being offered access to all of these critical systems in the United States. How is this being allowed to happen? You know, well, because this is how things are in our country, apparently. This coming from the Jerusalem Post. Waltz Netanyahu, his real name is Milikowski, as longtime listeners know, held Iran strike discussions behind the president's back. This comes after the former national security chief added the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic to a group chat that contained military strike plans on Yemen. So again, this is not surprising to me that Mike Waltz has been outed. We have known about this for a while. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you're pretty informed on that, gentleman. Part of the reason why President Trump dismissed National Security Advisor Mike Waltz was due to behind-the-scenes coordination with Carebear Prime Minister Bibi Milikowski on possible military action against Iran without the president's full knowledge or approval, the Washington Post reported Saturday. According to the report, which cited multiple senior administration officials, tensions between Waltz and Trump had been mounting for weeks. Waltz allegedly worked closely with Bibi to prepare military options in advance of a February Oval Office meeting, a move he made without informing the president. So here they're going to have this meeting, right, where if you guys remember, Bibi came, he sat in the Oval Office with the president, and the president, you know, there was some weird energy between the two, shall we say, which we pointed out in a prior video, I should add. But Waltz apparently was trying to coordinate things with the leader of a foreign country behind our president's back before that meeting to try to help set this up in Bibi's favor. Waltz wanted to take U.S. policy in a direction the president wasn't comfortable with. One official said it got back to Trump and the president wasn't happy. Trump, who has sought to avoid direct military confrontation with Iran and favors diplomacy over escalation, viewed Waltz's actions as an attempt to force his hand. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So they say White House officials said Waltz appeared more aligned with Milikowski than his own president. Yeah, well, I would venture to say this is most of his cabinet, most of Congress, most of the Senate. Yeah. You work for the president of your country, not a president of another country, an advisor was quoted as saying, comparing Waltz's behavior to unauthorized diplomacy that would have prompted dismissal in previous administrations. And I guess my question is, why just dismissal? Why not anything further than that? The controversy has reignited debate inside the administration over the future role of the National Security Council in a possible second Trump term. Some of the president's aides reportedly believe the NSC traditional framework is outdated for a president who prefers to rely on loyalists in his own instincts. On Thursday, Trump named Marco Rubio, yeah, you heard that right, as interim national security advisor. Despite his dismissal, Waltz will remain in quote-unquote public service. We all know he's not serving the public, he's serving himself. Trump announced on social media he was nominated to serve as U.S. ambassador to the UN. So this is kind of a BS post, but still, he shouldn't be in there at all. Another incident reportedly accelerated Waltz's removal. His accidental, no, it wasn't accidental, inclusion of a journalist, read propagandist, in a signal messaging group discussing military coordination in Yemen, a breach of protocol that raised eyebrows in the administration. And remember, they tried to blame that on Hegseth. However, officials said it only hastened what was already a growing consensus he no longer aligned with the president's vision. J.D. Vance attempted to rehabilitate Waltz's standing, embarrassingly enough for him, unsurprising, teal butt boy, inviting him on a March trip to Greenland, introducing him to conservatives with more isolationist views. Those efforts failed to change his internal calculus, so they were trying to get him to get back on board with the agenda, I suppose, but that didn't work. Waltz, a retired Green Beret known for his hawkish stance on Iran and Russia, was often viewed as ideologically out of step with Trump's transactional focused foreign policy approach. Well, the question then is, why was he put in place to begin with? I don't know anybody that thought it was a good idea to put him in charge as national security advisor. It's ridiculous. And you now have people calling for General Flynn to replace him. So this is just the latest slap in the face to all Americans that this is what is happening with our government, as if the occupation was not obvious enough. Waltz ousted over intense coordination with Bibi plotting war with Iran. Again, everybody should be angry about this. This article coming from Information Liberation and just basically rehashing what we already read. Mike Waltz was literally caught spying for the Carebear Nation, and all that happened to him was that he lost his job and was reappointed to a separate post. Why is that? Why is this man not being hit with criminal charges of some kind? You work for the president of your country, not the president of another country. Hard-hitting quote by Trump official against Waltz. Yeah, well, it took them long enough. Our greatest ally is a schizoid frenemy that is going to get us all unalived. Absolutely. The new document underscores the schizoid relationship between the U.S. and the Carebear Nation. This is talking about the Snowden information that came out with the Snowden drop, which cooperate closely in military and intelligence operations, but also aggressively spy on each other. A previously released Snowden document said that, quote, one of the NSA's biggest threats is actually from a friendly intelligence service like the Carebear Nation. Another revealed that a U.S. national intelligence estimate ranked the Care Bears as the third most aggressive intelligence service against the U.S., behind just China and Russia. Following the recent revelation of Waltz's nefarious activities on behalf of Bibi and the Care Bears, I found the NSA flagged the Care Bears as a major threat in a number of areas. Also, the Carebear Nation has been selling advanced U.S. military technology to China for over a quarter of a century. U.S. officials have routinely covered up hostile Carebear activities against the U.S. over the past few decades because of the power of the Carebear lobby, which is unrivaled in the U.S. The U.S. would be far better off and much safer if we were to suspend all military support for the Care Bears until they agreed to stop mass murdering tens of thousands of women and children in Gaza, so we could restore peace and stability to the Middle East. In 2007, the Bush National Security Agency identified the Care Bears as one of the top 4 countries that pose a threat to the U.S. in terms of, quote, the threat of development of WMDs in delivery methods, particularly ballistic and nuclear-capable cruise missiles. The NSA also flagged the Care Bears' WMD missile proliferation activities and cruise missiles as threats. The Carebear Nation was listed as the third biggest cyber threat after Russia and China in a 2013 Intel report. The Carebear Nation was listed as a leading perpetrator of espionage and intelligence collection operations and manipulation and influence operations against U.S. government, military, science and technology, and intelligence community organs. The term manipulation/influence operations refers to covert attempts by the Carebear Nation to sway U.S. public opinion in its favor, which it does frequently. The Carebear Nation was listed as a top threat to U.S. financial banking system infrastructure. The Carebear Nation also appears on the list of countries believed by the NSA to be enabling electronic warfare producers and proliferators. And that comes from Newsweek. This is not fringe. It is not, this isn't a conspiracy. It's real. Bibi holds an emergency security meeting after a major scandal. U.S.-made Arrow 3 and THAAD systems failed to intercept a Yemeni missile. Western cutting-edge weapons turning to scrap. I find that kind of funny. Here we've got Bibi with Friedman, the current ambassador to Israel.
Wow. Yeah. Can't think of a better example of the incredibly close and important cooperation between Israel and the United States. This is
incredibly close and important cooperation.
Outstanding example of how the American Armed Forces have made a commitment to Israel's safety and security. They've done this in many other ways, but I can't think of a better single example.
So we actually have U.S. weapons systems and American soldiers on the ground here. Why? It's not necessary to the United States national security.
Well, than what we're looking at right now, and it's a testament to the really unbreakable bond between Israel and the United States at so many different levels.
The unbreakable bond that we all have to hear about, which has nothing to do with any real bond. Like we just said, they're continuously spying on us, attacking us, doing psyops and false flags, etc. So listen to this. This is part of what was going on. Mike Waltz used a Carebear app to archive signal messages. How many times do we have to say it? The Carebear shills in our government are spying for a foreign country. Say that a few times, let it sink in. Then watch AIPAC CEO explain how Waltz, Rubio, and Stefanik spy for them. We don't have to play that video here because we already covered that in a prior video on the channel. But I just find this fascinating that he can literally get caught red-handed putting classified American intelligence information on a Carebear app that is obviously going to them, and nothing happens to him. Waltz was not caught using Signal yesterday, but rather a Carebear tech firm's version of it that makes a copy of all messages. That opens up messages to surveillance by foreign intelligence. On the day he was fired, Waltz used the app to copy these messages. Why has this man not been brought up on charges of treason? I'd like to know. I think all of us would like to know. Waltz needs to be arrested for espionage and treason 100%, funded by the Carebear lobby. AIPAC CEO said Waltz spies for them, submitted a Carebear fealty pledge to AIPAC, colluded with Milikowski against the administration, backed up signal data on a Carebear app before being fired. Like, you couldn't make this up if you wanted to. It is that outrageous. Douglas Mackey says Waltz got fired because he was perceived as literally working for a foreign nation. And yet there's no espionage charges, no treason charges, no court-martialing of this man. Unreal. Okay, continuing on here, Gen X Girl says, how long has Waltz spied for the Carebear Nation? And she cites this tweet. This is coming from his congressional account. Waltz and the Select Committee on Intelligence meet with Bibi this week, and they're signing papers. This is from 2023. This one, May 5th, 2023. So he's been working for them for years. It's outrageous. The punishment for Waltz allegedly coordinating with Bibi to bomb Iran and using a Carebear app that exposed U.S. classified information is a cushy appointment as a UN ambassador. Yeah, it is clown world, guys. And now we have this. The U.S. House is set to vote Monday. This is tomorrow. This is being recorded Sunday, May 4th. So this will be tomorrow, on a bill that would punish Americans with fines of up to $1 million or prison terms of up to 20 years for participation in boycotts of the Carebears or Carebear settlements that are promoted by international government organizations. So it says here, furnishing information about whether someone is associated with a charitable or fraternal organization that support the boycotted country. And propaganda says, if I boycott the Carebear Nation, I go to jail and get $1 million fine. But if Mike Waltz betrays America and sends Carebears sensitive communications regarding American national security and works with a foreign leader to drag America into a war, he gets appointed to the UN as an ambassador. Yeah, so $1 million, 20 years in prison. That's the ransom the U.S. federal government will charge if you participate in a boycott of a foreign state. A nation that was literally founded on the back of a boycott is now telling its citizens they will be bankrupted and thrown into prison for 2 decades if they dare protest a foreign country. This is here, House set to vote Monday on H.R. 867, the IGO Anti-Boycott Act that will punish Americans with fines up to $1 million or prison terms of 20 years for participating in boycotts of the Carebears or Carebear settlements. Unbelievable. We are so compromised as a country. Now, I have Daniel Concannon here, who I thought had a really good take on the Shiloh situation. I'm sure everyone's heard of Shiloh Hendrix at this point. If you haven't, to give a brief background, this is a mom who was with her young children at a Minnesota playground where she encountered some cultural enrichment, shall we say, by another kid on the playground who stole her son's things and literally stole it out of her diaper bag. And you guys know how it is, especially moms who are trying to get their kids out of the house for a little bit. They're at the park, they're constantly stressed out, especially when you're dealing with two young children. Two young toddlers. It is very stressful already, especially in this economic climate. I'm sure makes it even harder. And so she's there just trying to let her kids play at the park. And of course, this kid steals from her and she says a slur, you know, heaven forbid she says a gamer word under her breath, and some Somali pede who has no business being in this country in the first place, let alone being at a playground for children, pulls out his phone and starts filming her, and then challenges her to say what she just said again while she's being filmed. And of course he was expecting her to cower in fear of them, which is what most people do because they're pathetic. And instead of doing that, she repeated it. She said right back what she said. She stood her ground. She said the hurdy word. She said the gamer word unapologetically and walked off. And then they posted the video online trying to whip up a frenzy and mob against her. She had people driving past her house, posting videos on social media like, come outside, Shiloh. You know, she had people calling CPS trying to get her children taken from her, all because she said a hurdy word. It's outrageous. So you had people who came out against her, you had people supporting her, and I think this is a very reasonable take here. Daniel says, on the left is Shiloh Hendrix, a reported stay-at-home mom of 2 who is in a 10-year relationship. On the right is Colin Wright, who calls Hendrix a, quote, immoral degenerate with his girlfriend, Christina Buttons, a former hardcore adult actress, who went on to become a leftist activist before joining the fake right gatekeeping operations of Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire and Paul Singer's Manhattan Institute. And that's who Colin Wright is. He's one of these Manhattan Institute people. Fake, you know, controlled opposition clowns. Yes, the guy calling Shiloh Hendrix a, quote, immoral degenerate is currently dating a woman who anyone in the world can watch get professionally enriched down by a variety of men she'd never met until the day they decided to enrich her on camera for money. She's really come a long way, though, hasn't she? Now they put Paul Singer's talking points in her for money. High standards there at the Manhattan Institute. I'm not here to play morality police. I'm simply here to explain that this is exactly what you should expect from subversive fake right clowns who run around trying to make this failed James Lindsayism of woke right stick to anyone that they don't like. There's nothing they won't say, and their eternal effort to keep people on the Con Inc. reservation and stop white people from taking their own side. It doesn't matter how stupid they look as they condemn a dedicated mom from Minnesota for saying a naughty word, claiming the moral high ground while holding hands with a girl from, and we're not going to read these titles, but these are real, films, quote unquote, that she was in. It's literally their job to say anything they can to keep you inside the gate, just like it was Colin's girlfriend's job to open her gate on film. And while this is horrible for society, shilling for neocons like Shapiro and Paul Singer is even worse. And yes, if you're wondering, those titles are real. Yes, that's Colin Wright's current girlfriend. And yes, this is who the Manhattan Institute employs. And by the way, the Manhattan Institute pays Christina Buttons 6 figures a year. And finally, just to clarify what they mean when they say woke right, anyone who acknowledges the nature of the decades-long war on certain people and deals with it for what it is, explicitly anti-white, which is what it is. And this has been going on in this country for a very long time, basically been codified into law. There's institutional discrimination that's been going on at, you know, jobs, at Ivy League schools, etc. We don't even need to mention this. Everybody here knows. Anyone who expresses any opinion that could be considered in any way at odds with Carebearism, the Carebear Nation, or Carebear institutional influence. Yes, if you point out any of those things, they say that you're woke right. The two surest signs someone has escaped their reservation. So this is Colin Wright and Christina Buttons, the controlled opposition who slandered Shiloh Hendrix. Now, she was able to get a give, send, go set up because, of course, she was subjected to this harassment from these psychotic individuals who were trying to destroy her and have her children taken from her for saying a herdy word. This sparked major backlash from people who literally just watched Anthony Carmelo, the guy who murdered Austin Metcalf in cold blood, get out on bond and get a big GoFundMe set up for him where he was able to raise over $500,000. He was able to move into a gated community and buy a new vehicle and basically live large. And the comments on that fundraiser were absolutely disgusting. They were literally like celebrating what he did to Austin Metcalf. It was pathetic. And so this is the backlash to that. And it's not just that, right? It's Laken Riley, it's Ethan Liming, it's all of these other victims, too many to name, that have gone completely unnoticed, and this, people are sick of it. The $12,000 N Tower. This will go down in history as the greatest N Tower ever. So on the fundraiser, on her Give, Send, Go, people decided to do a N Tower of $2,000, $2,000 donation. So that's amazing. The most expensive N Tower in history happened because of the Battle of Shiloh. And then we've got, you know, the guy from Give, Send, Go. And I will say, you know, we're all grateful to Give, Send, Go, who have made it possible for, you know, my documentary to fundraise, and I think for many others, for J6ers, you know, for other people who've been victimized. However, they allowed the comments on Carmelo's fundraiser to stand for months of people calling for the deaths of white people and celebrating what this man had done, and they said that was free speech. But the minute that it's on the other foot and people start making similar comments, and I would say much tamer comments on Shiloh's fundraiser, literally just saying we don't have to live like this, you know, basically, then they have to shut down the comments, and they shut them down on both fundraisers. But it was clear that they would have allowed Carmelo's fundraiser with all of those nasty comments to stand, and they would have said it was free speech. But, you know, they just can't handle the other side acknowledging reality. I'm starting to believe, so this was the story that a lot of these leftists came up with, that the young kid who she hurled the naughty word at on the playground was a 5-year-old autistic child, you know, which is not true. If you look at the video, he does not look 5. He looks closer to being 10 years old. Like, there's no reason for this 10-year-old kid to be stealing from an 18-month-old baby. Like, come on, guys, ridiculous. But I thought this was fascinating. Breaking: a massive Somali autism welfare scam just exploded in Minnesota. The number of autism providers went up 700% from 41 to 328 in the past 5 years. So, you know, this story, like, I'm not buying it. Autism spending shot up from 6 million to 192 million. Somalis are 7 times more likely to get autism services. FBI raids happening now. Not that we can trust the FBI or anything like that, but these graphs are pretty telling in and of itself. And he says here, I am yes, you are no, says, I'm starting to believe the 5-year-old black kid who tried to steal from Shiloh Hendrix doesn't actually have autism, and I suspect that is correct. Toad says, you want to know why we support Shiloh Hendrix? This is why. And these are the comments, you know, that were being posted here. Death to the white man being allowed to be said openly like this, and nothing happens. And so this is what this was a backlash. This was the backlash. Way of the World says, I thought you would all like to know Shiloh's fundraiser just overtook the fundraiser of the killer Carmelo Anthony. So she has surpassed his fundraising. It was outrageous. He was able to raise that much money anyways, considering what he did. But it shows you that their community will support him regardless. A cold-blooded killer who stabbed a teenager in the heart at school. And so, you know, they're saying, look, if you guys are going to support that, yes, we're going to support the mom who said the gamer word at a park. And this is the actual video. I'm not going to play it, but I agree with the sentiment. It's time to end cancel culture. Support her if you can. She has now surpassed $600,000, which I think is incredible support. And I'm glad she was able to do that and help her family. But you can see that this is not just some... I know that people were skeptical at first. There are people who are always concerned that maybe this is some kind of staged event. And, you know, they would cite, and I think correctly, Hawk Tua, Tiffany Gomez, Lily Gaddis, Derpy Tango, who turned out literally to be a Care Bear plant because she held a sign up. You know, they were all trying to boost her, and I get it. I called all of that crap out at the time, but this is not the same thing. Those individuals were looking for fame. I mean, the Hawk Tua thing was staged, and that is a little bit more obviously staged, or I think past. For a lot of people thought that that could have been just a random interview. They didn't know it was set up in advance. But I mean, Lily obviously was being promoted. Like, they always astroturf these e-girls, and they try to, you know, give them an edgy thing to make them go viral online and then grift off of them. And people were trying to suggest that Shiloh was somehow a psyop or the same thing. She is not a Derpy Tango. This is not somebody who showed up holding up a big sign that says, well, you know what the sign says. This is somebody who is a mom who was just at the park with her little baby, her son, trying to have a relaxing day, and is constantly subjected to this kind of nonsense. This guy followed her to her car. This guy turned out, like I said, to be a Somali pedo who was part of a grooming gang and did horrible things to a 16-year-old minor, allegedly. And so this is the difference. And they were going to try to ruin her life, and people came together and said, no, enough of this. No more. Like years ago, if this altercation was caught on video, she would have had her life destroyed. She'd have been fired from her job. Well, we know she doesn't work. She's a stay-at-home mom. So her husband or her boyfriend or whatever, he'd be fired from his job. You know, she'd be ostracized in her community. Nobody would have supported a fundraiser for her. And something I will say is that it is a little bit disconcerting, you know, when I've spent years trying to get people to like support the Whitmer guys or even write them a letter. And I had people like arguing with me about being too scared to write them a letter while they're in prison, but they would like support, you know, her fundraiser. And I would just say you should be consistent in your support. And I would like to see the Whitmer guys being supported with the same zeal with which people have supported Shiloh. But I agree with supporting her. I think that this is important that we establish now that you're not going to try to, you know, capture our worst moments on camera, terrorize us, and then try to post it to the internet to incite some kind of, you know, witch hunt against us and destroy our lives. Like, enough of it. It's not happening anymore. And if you try to make us famous for these moments, we will make these people rich. So it will backfire on you. And that's the incentive to not put these, you know, interactions on camera anymore, to take away their power to wield this stuff over us. And it also refutes the idea that Shiloh has any kind of privilege in this situation. She clearly doesn't. And that's why this man, this Somali who shouldn't even be in this country, is so comfortable following her, filming her, following her to her car. A woman with a baby, an adult man who was at the park, questionable enough considering his history, highly questionable, and then following her to her car. That's scary. You know, that man should be in prison. And so I think that this is fantastic that she's been able to get this support, and I want to keep this momentum going. Why can't y'all, if y'all can donate $600,000 to help support her and her family, why can't you guys write a letter to the Whitmer guys? Why can't you help their families who have had a major financial burden on them for the past 5 years with prison costs, with also taking care of the children, and being the women now having to be the breadwinners of the family while the guys are locked up? I mean, they should be supported too with as much zeal, but that never seems to happen. And I get it, people are busy, people are, it's harder to keep track of these things, but I've put it all like on a website, the documentary website, to make it easy for people to get the mailing addresses to write to the guys. And if y'all can't even write a letter, we've got problems, and we really need to get more organized in that regard. And finally, here, Waltz fired for being a Carebear spy. Shiloh Hendrix raises more money than Carmelo Anthony. And then the X payouts to India got canceled because they were scamming the system, which I find hilarious and not at all surprising. And so there are a lot of great memes have come from the Battle of Shiloh that I think are kind of iconic. They're hilarious. And I'm interested to know what you guys think. Do you think that she was in the right to do what she did? Or do you think that what she did was wrong? And it's interesting that the leftists and the conservatives who are coming out against Shiloh, most of those people live in gated communities. They're very wealthy people. They have been insulated from the consequences of the policies that they promote. They don't have to live in the ghetto. They don't have to hear gunshots going off every night. They don't have to worry about their cars getting broken into. They don't have their Amazon packages of diapers stolen off the front steps of their home, and the constant barrage of nonsense that working class Americans have to deal with. They're not the ones whose jobs have been outsourced, sent overseas, the manufacturing jobs. Then when they were told to learn to code, those jobs now being replaced by AI and H-1Bs. No, like, they have been protected from this. And so they don't understand the daily struggle that people like Shiloh and her family have to endure. And that is why they are fine sitting in their ivory towers, criticizing her, calling her names, calling her white trash, and all this other nonsense. They are the most disgusting people in this country. And that I think it's a positive that they are facing backlash. And the other thing is that they're protected from the opinions people have about them and their policies because they're astroturfed on social media. They have curated news feeds where they don't see the comments of regular people who are constantly buried by the algorithm. What was interesting about the fundraiser, the Give, Send, Go, is that it was pure and unadulterated way for people to express their support without it being censored or buried in the algorithm, because you can't bury the donation. So the amount of support shows you how we can bypass the censorship in other ways that we see even on platforms like X, who pretend to be free speech platforms. They're not. And I think that the whole point was sending a message. And I thought that was a very interesting point about it, is that it bypasses traditional forms of censorship, shadow banning, siloing, throwing people into echo chambers, etc. It was just one way to cut through all of the noise and show this is what the majority of people support. This is what we believe. And you are not like us, these Con Inc. establishment influencer types of people. You're not one of us. Basically, that is the message being sent, and I think that that is what they are most aggrieved about. Nobody's really super offended that somebody said the gamer word. Every single person has said these words. I mean, come on, let's be real. But anyways, that's it for now. I hope you guys have a good day.